So today I'm going to be changing the rear master cylinder, brake master cylinder, and the rear brake caliper on the 04 Sportsman HO 500 4x4. And so we're going to be cracking this line loose. I'm going to take that bolt out, take that bolt out, and on the back you got the line that runs up to the reservoir, which is back up in here. That's your brake fluid reservoir. I've already got the old caliper off, but I don't have it disconnected yet. Didn't want no dirt in the lines. As you can tell, it's pretty shot. The new caliper laying on the floor, and the new master cylinder I've got laying here, which is going to be this guy, and that's what's going on. So stand by. Now I tried cracking the line and it's pretty solid, so I'm going to leave it on, and once I get the master cylinder out, then I'll just twist the master cylinder off and disconnect it from there. It's a little bit of a snug fit right here for the hand behind it. Something in my ear.
Never seen those.
Just about put this first one out. There's that one. And the nut. Okay, so I'm going to get this second one out. I'm not going to bore you with the standing here watching me unscrew a bolt. Everybody knows how to do all that. So I'm going to get this one out of here, and then I'll be right back. So I've got the line off the old master cylinder, and these two are pretty much rusted together. I don't want to snap the line because I don't have another line to replace it with. I will eventually swap this whole thing out. So for the time being, I'm just going to use the old bolt, but I'll put the new crush washer on it. Get enough fingers here. Of course, I went sideways. So I'll put the new crush washer on, and then I'll just run the master cylinder up on that and snug these guys up and just reuse that line. And then when I can get it one ordered, I'll bring one in and we'll come back out and we'll swap this bad boy out again. And what did we say it was? 14, 15. And there she is. And now we'll get this remounted and get the reservoir hose put back on. We'll bolt her up. So the illustrious geniuses in the development team for Polaris chose to make this supply line from the reservoir to the back of the rear master cylinder impossible to get to with your fingers. So what I ended up having to do was taking it off right here, take this nut out, remove the reservoir, so I can get this line to slide down and pull the master cylinder out where we can get that line off the back of it. So now I'm just going to reinstall this guy, and now we'll move back to the caliper. So up next is going to be the rear caliper. We're going to go ahead and just swap it out. This thing's got some miles on it. Man, she's been rode hard and put away wet a few times in her past. Considering this thing's 20 years old, and I'm pretty sure this is probably going to be an original. So I went the cheap route and I got me a Chinese knockoff, pretty much identical, and I think it's going to be, I think we'll be all right with this. So we'll get this hooked up and stand by. Okay, I'm reinstalling the new caliper, and with the old lines, but the caliper came with a brand new banjo nut. Just want to make sure that when you're putting this all back together, that clean all your surfaces off. You don't want any foreign matter to get up inside that line. I realize the old line probably already has a ton of foreign matter in it to begin with. These lines are dry. They've been empty for a while. So you'll notice you got on a banjo bolt, you're going to have a crush washer on the top and a crush washer underneath it. And then it'll go into this port on my caliper. Then the front brake will go back here. If you don't know, the 2004 Sportsman 500s, your front brake lever controls the front brakes and the back brakes. Your foot control only controls the rear brakes on these models here. So we're going to put this together real quick. Okay, when you're installing this caliper, one thing to take a note of is the bolt. The bolt's going to have a flat washer and it's going to have a lock washer. This is the orientation that it should be going back on, just like this. But the flat washer is going to be against the steel plate, and the lock washer between the top of the bolt and the flat washer. And then this will go through here. Actually, it goes through here. And then it'll bolt into the back of this guy. All right, and let's get her done. I'm fishing, trying to find it. There it is. Okay, cut. So I honestly doubt that these would ever back out, but just for a little bit of personal security, I guess, I'm gonna put a little bit of just a dab of blue Loctite on the top and the bottom bolt for the caliper, and it's just a little security. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything. It's probably not necessary, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And this guy will go back up in here. I fish around a little bit. I know my arm is probably in the way, but these aren't exactly the easiest thing to hit. And we're in, Julianne. Kind of hard to get my fingers up in there. So we just pull that axle up out of the way a little bit. I know you can't see, but I was just removing this bolt so I can put the Loctite on it. A little dab will do you. If you haven't noticed yet, my neighbor's getting a new roof put on. So he's got a whole crew over there working diligently to get him done today. And we'll get this guy snugged up. And what I did too, also, I left everything loose My lines on for my front and rear brakes are loose. I want to get everything lined up and get this snugged up, then I'll pull this back so I got access to my bleeder valve. Then I'll snug these guys down. And then after we get all this done, we'll add fluid to the reservoir. And I'm gonna let it gravity bleed some of this out to get the air out of the system. I can't tell you the last time this machine actually had brakes. From the looks of things, it's probably been a few Sundays. Everything looks good, guys. Everything looks really good. So, all right, so we got there. Now we're gonna snug those banjo nuts up on these lines. I didn't add any Loctite to these. I didn't feel it was going to be necessary. If you were curious, these are going to be a 12 millimeter, and these guys back here are 14 or 13s. So these are 13s, and these puppies are 12 mil. So I'm gonna leave just enough space here so I can get my bleeder wrench on here and snug these up. Don't go crazy. You got crush washers on here. Just get them snug. Just use common sense. I'm sure there's a torque spec for these. I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to use common sense and snug it down without tearing anything up. That feels pretty good there. And honestly, I can't tell you if this is oriented properly, but I went with what was already on this machine, and I ran the rear brake line to the tall tower and the front brake to this rear tower. Ideally, when it's in position, everything's set in place, and you get these bushings in, you want to double check, make sure your brake lines aren't rubbing against anything. Otherwise, you're going to have definitely a premature failure just from friction. Again, you don't want to get stupid with this. Just get them on snug. Like I said, they got crush washers. You don't want to smash everything to the smithereens. You just want to get it snug. And that feels pretty good right there. I've got plenty of room to get my bleeder wrench on, which is going to be, I think it's either 6 or 8 millimeter. I can't tell. My wife has to tell you, what size is that?
That's an 8.
All right. My lovely camera and mechanic assistant says it's an 8 millimeter. So your bleeder valve on this specific caliper, again, this is going to be a Chinese knockoff, is going to be 8 millimeter. And this is where we're at, guys. Here in a few minutes, we're going to start the put some fluid in the reservoir, and I'm going to open these valves up and let it kind of gravity bleed for a few minutes, and then I'll start putting air to it and pumping them up and pushing it out. Stand by. Okay, so these machines here run .3 brake fluid. Make sure your brake fluid's clean. You don't want it to have any kind of contaminant in it. It's going to destroy your system. Wipe everything off. I've already done this once, so I know it's fairly clean on the outside. When you take it off, don't brush against anything. It keeps crud and dirt out. There, the rubber came out with it. And it looks pretty clean. It's not in bad shape. So we're going to set that on the side. I'll take my rag and I'm going to gently wipe that out just on the outside a little bit. We just don't want nothing inside that hole. And we're going to fill it up, then we're going to pump some of this off. I'm sitting there watching it drop down a little bit, so I'm hoping the gravity will pull some of that down in. It may not, because I got to pump it just a little bit, but let's see, can you see that there? See the air pushing through, and I'm just barely touching it. I don't know if I mentioned it when I installed that master cylinder, but there's a brass plunger down here. There's a brass plunger, and boy, it's gonna make it difficult to see it. There you can just barely see the brass plunger about where my finger's pointing. When you hit your brakes, it depresses that plunger, and that's what applies the pressure to your brakes. Okay. We did lose a little bit of that fluid, so I'm going to bring it back up. Alright. I'm going to run some of that through. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the cap back on it, and my lovely assistant is going to work the brake, and I'm going to go back here and crack that bleeder valve. Go ahead and pump it up and hold it down. Hang on. Okay, pump it up. Hold it.